Welcome to the video. In this video, we'll talk about SOFI. We'll take a look at the daily and weekly time frame on the charts, see where I'm going to add, where I'm going to trim. We'll talk about my overall valuation. We'll take a look at the options market, what's happening there. We'll look at some SOFI news. In the meantime, my live portfolio results are there. You can copy me over on eToro. Enjoy. All right, looking at the daily chart for SOFI, obviously we're still in this kind of bullish megaphone trend. Love it. I love absolutely everything about SOFI at the minute. I love it technically and love it fundamentally. I love management, can't really complain. They seem to have addressed most of the concerns I previously had. That said, I still find valuation at this level a little bit stretched. We do have earnings coming up, so it's an opportunity to reevaluate our stance on that. I think they're actually going to come out with much better numbers than I'm anticipating. Let's look at the chart. Today it's been choppy. It's had some really big moves for a few days here. Obviously we had the tariff Barney again, and for some reason SOFI I sold off because it's massively affected by rare earth minerals and trade restrictions on that. But I take the opportunity. That said, I didn't actually add because I had added on slightly lower than that drop was quite recently, and upon those shares as of today. Price has really been supported well from this volume shelf that we've been carving out and this historical trend line. So all in all, very happy. We seem to be stuck between this red trend line here and this red trend line here. These lines have been on the chart for ages, pretty much set by this measured move, and there's not really too much to point out there. That's what we're dealing with. We'll take a look at what institutions are looking at on the options market. Above this level, though, we've got this Fibonacci level. That's going to be quite strong resistance at 30.79. I do think $30 again is going to be quite strong psychologically. I'm not expecting to make a new all-time high prior to earnings, but I think if the numbers come out the way I think they will, that we should get a pop, especially going into a rate cut environment where financials are about to get a leg up and those numbers are about to look better and better. What else is looking good on the chart? Obviously let me extend this trend line out a bit so you can see more where we're likely to go. That's going to be strong resistance when we get to it. We do have this measured move, but I can't really place that accurately until I know where price is going to break out. I imagine price to break out more further down here. But that orange trend line is going to supply some resistance. My long-term price target possibilities are quite high with SOFI, but these measured moves, I just want to really, really hammer home. I'm not expecting to hit that price in days and weeks. That is a multi-year target. Okay, and this position in my portfolio will be held for several years. I absolutely believe that management will make their target of 10xing the stock and making it one of the top 10 financial institutions. So that's the plan. That's why I'm holding, and it's already done very nicely for me. Obviously, there will be hiccups along the way. There always is with these kind of things. Really, the only kind of lagging area we've got to deal with is the tech side of it. But management seem pretty set on 2026, 2077, seeing those numbers come to fruition. Looking further down the chart, RSI is neutral, so we're setting up very nicely into earnings on that. MACDX Plus also looks good, and the BX Trender also. We did have a little tick down here, which isn't super bullish, but given the macro, we've got to take that into consideration here. All in all, still think this is a really, really bullish chart. If this broke down from here, though, it would be less bullish and less exciting for me, but I won't be trimming on a breakout of this because, as I said, this is a long-term position for me. I don't want to trim in and out of it too much because the volatility has dropped so much that that's no longer an exciting premise. So that just means for me, if we did break out, my measured move on it would probably be kind of this measurement. Oh, moving the whole chart. So if we did break lower, I benefit by about 15%. Now, if I was swing trading it, that would be amazing, but this is a core position in my portfolio. The fees and the mental strain I would have rolling out of that position and then back in wouldn't be great. It doesn't feel toppy to me where it is. I had previously done a lot of trimming here and I pretty much scaled back in. So I don't want to overtrade this one. I don't want to fall for this trap where I trim out too early. The narrative is certainly in favour on that one, and I've made that mistake a few times over the past year, trimming out when the narrative is really in favour. Let's look at the weekly. So that big old target I had up there, up to about 190, that is a multi-year target, just to be clear. That is based on a cup and handle execution happening here. Pretty smooth, although we could argue it's more of a head and shoulders if we get it. That would be a very bullish pattern for me. But if price keeps doing what I think it's going to do, we're not going to get much of a shoulder, so I'm not set that will be the strongest pattern to trade. But, strange things have happened. It's good to have an area roughly where you think price will go, and we're still working with pretty nice Fibonacci levels up there. We are coming into a blue sky area that doesn't have much resistance, though. The RSI indicator on the weekly is a little bit spicy, so that suggests more of a technical cooling off, which is quite a juxtaposition to the fundamental story. So I'm weighing up that, and I'm comfortable holding through the possibility of a pullback in this one, purely because the macro is telling me to be a little bit more risk on with financials right now. Hopefully that all makes sense. Macro first, fundamentals second, technicals third. Yep. Check. That is the order in which I assess things. And right now, that's what we're working with. Doesn't mean I'm necessarily always right, but for me, that's the safest way for me to manage my risk. MACDX Plus looks good though, and the BX trend fading a little bit. Wouldn't really like to see that go red, but we'll have to wait and see what triggers. If we do have a bullish move post earnings, that will invalidate a lot of this. But we could slide before earnings. I would actually prefer to slide before earnings because that gives us a better setup into earnings rather than the opposite way around. Options market on this one looks pretty good, pretty neutral between market makers are sitting. Market makers want to keep it below 30 so they don't have to pay the premium to the long position strikes. And the support as well, they want to keep it above that so they don't have to pay out anyone in a short position that will be in the money. But let's look at some actual further dated ones. So for earnings, when was earnings? 28th of October, blah, blah, blah. 28th of October, so week ending this one. These are what we're dealing with. So the expected move was actually quite large on that one. So the market is pricing in for a larger move on this one. Doesn't always mean we'll get it. That's just what the consensus is. There's a lot of downside support at 25. So I can see why market makers have picked that area. That is definitely people leaning more bearish on SOFI. Now that, I think, is probably because, as we mentioned earlier, and we've been talking about for the last few weeks, SOFI is pretty much at the current fair value. It's again a little bit on the pricey side. Obviously, if you're a long-term holder, that's not so much of a big deal. But it's definitely something to be aware of, and I think that's why a lot of people are probably shorting this. So I am expecting a really, really good quarter, but it's going to take people a little while to revalue the stock. So we could get a slide off even if we do get good numbers, purely because that valuation is getting a little bit stretched. But it depends how good the numbers are, right? If the loan platform comes in absolute banger and members have shot up, then we're probably going bullish. So there is a lot of bullish interest higher at kind of $30 as well. Again, we talked about that being a strong resistance, so it makes sense why people are betting there. But all in all, very excited. I'm be interested to follow the options market through to earnings and see if people start to rebalance depending on macro. Obviously, JP's comments hinted more at cuts again, so that might change people's stance on this. Let's push it out to January 2026 as normal though. Now, we get a bit more of a mixed bag. You've got a lot of people sitting in the money on this one, so they're happy to hold by the looks of it. They've got time on their side. We do have quite a lot of interest to the downside. Now, I don't necessarily think that's because people think SOFI is just going to crash and burn. This could be more recession hedging. We've seen that word thrown around a lot lately. So my expectation is this would be a bit of hedging strategy for next year. Let us go to January 2027. A little bit more bullish. We have one really high volume strike here at 15. Now, I think that's pretty unlikely. So my opinion would be that's hedging as well, but you never know. You never know for sure. You can only listen to what your gut's telling you. Anyone that ever tells you they're 100% sure something's going to happen in the market or how something is, very matter of factly, just ignore them because they're absolutely blagging it, to be honest. Let's go January 28. Now they're out. Long term looks pretty good on this one. So my gut feeling on this is people and institutions are positioning for some short-term recession worries. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen. I do have some concerns for kind of mid-2026, late 2026. We've got to see how liquidity goes. That's generally the area that I'm a little bit concerned about. But post that, it looks like the market's pretty bullish. Which is odd because you'd think recession takes a little bit longer to come out. I mean, we technically have rolling recessions these days, so I'm not sure we'll get quite the recession people envision. SOFI news, as usual, we've got probability price target up there. I should probably add more stuff like this to the other things I'm covering, but it's just remembering to get around to it. Obviously, Tesla, I don't want to scare people off with price predictions on that one because I'll probably get it in the neck over that one. But certainly we can do something like this for PayPal. I can put my basic model on there for that one. Other than that, the institutional ownership still looks really, really good for SoFi. Can't hate that. A few bits of news. We've had a lot of bank earnings reporting. JPM had a good beat on both fronts. Just looking now, BlackRock had beats on both fronts. Citi had beats on both fronts. Goldman beats on both fronts. Wells Fargo beats on both fronts. Now, bear in mind, SoFi normally beats. It's probably going to be a beat. The question is going to just be how good of a beat, but pretty bullish on that one. Other SoFi news, top of my head, the options trading's rolling out. What else have we got in my news feed? Much exciting. Just a lot of hiring and jiggling around in the company, trying to get crypto back on. Sweepstakes, not really interested in that though, to be honest. It's just a little bit of a perk. Just a lot. They're doing a lot of product building behind the scenes, I think. I do remember seeing an article about the web traffic though. That looks absolutely phenomenal. I'm very excited about. Typically, that results to great member growth, so bear that in mind. But nothing's really changed too much with my thesis on this one, and there hasn't been any big enough news to change my thesis on this one. I'm still very green. My position, I've been trying to keep around a 10% weighting in my portfolio. We're currently at 10.909%. Happy about that. Really wanted to make sure that 10% before earnings. I didn't want to miss any crazy stuff they're going to say. So I think it's going to be a good earnings call as well. Blah, 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 blah. I think that'll do. Yeah, let's wrap it up. That's a wrap. If you enjoyed this content, feel free to share it with your mum, your nan, your dad, your dog, whoever. And I'll see you next time.